Hi there, my name is Troels. Welcome to Soundpaint. Welcome to our operatic soprano library, also known as Maria. Maria is a classically trained opera singer from Greece, and this library is the most comprehensive deep-sampled opera vocal library ever done. It consists of over 6,500 vocal samples divided over multiple legatos, including some new forms of legatos that we haven't explored before. We also have a multitude of arcs, sustains. We have thousands of ornaments and vocal fragments and phrases that can be combined for advanced melodic use. We have thousands of syllables and individual staccato vocals, so you can truly build your own opera if you want to. What I learned working with Maria and getting deeper into opera is that opera is in many ways sort of the ultimate way of pushing the human voice. And as you'll see in this library here, we can play classically, and we will, in proper operatic traditions with all the vibrato and all that stuff, but we can also stretch it into many other things. I happen to love the TV show White Lotus, both seasons, and there's so many beautiful things that they're doing with vocals and solo vocals in terms of sort of mangling them into something new. So we'll also be exploring more of the musical sound design White Lotus qualities of this beautiful opera singer here as well. Let's just get started here with the legatos, because we have a specific legato patch here out of many that I keep coming back to. The track that you heard in the intro here is a piece I wrote a couple of years ago. In fact, I've been sitting a little bit on this library because it's personal to me, but I felt now was a good time to release it. But I wrote it specifically for this legato in mind here. There's a melody you're gonna hear, and it goes like this. This is our 2-syllable legato, meaning that every time I play a new interval combinations or melody, she's gonna change what she's singing in terms of the vowel. You know that we have vocal libraries in abundance from all sorts of developers, including us, where we normally focus on U, A, E kind of legato articulations for voices. But in reality, especially for opera, it's so much more advanced. They just don't sing A all the time, even though we have many forms of A legatos, which we'll also explore. For me, I wanted a specific type of legato that was more melodic, more human. Let me play you this melody in context to other instruments. I just love this demo here. I feel this should be called melodic legato. I made this other demo here, which is a more free form of opera. I wanted to explore what can we do with the human voice if I was restricted to only using the human voice for an entire composition. So the following example here was purely made with vocal sounds, some of them operatic, some of them coming from our hybrid voices designs, and really trying to explore the extremities of human sounds, human vocals. On one side, we have something as fundamental as moaning, and on the other side, we have opera. And I was just curious to see what happens if we explore the very primal sounds of moaning and juxtaposition that with something as elegant and again at the pinpoint of humanity and what the human is capable of in terms of opera, and put those together and try to create a composition that's only made with human voices here. And it's a very simple melody. It just goes like... And for me, it's interesting playing opera completely exposed and naked like this here because it sounds so extreme, but it changes so dramatically in context to a mix. While it may sound extreme here, the vibrato is so exaggerated, there's so much power in it, it's almost overwhelming just on its own here. Once you weave it into your composition, it sits amongst the other elements here, you got the true opera going here. Now, there's a lot more to our legatos than this one here. I just wanted to show you this one first and foremost because this is the most humane legato I've heard, especially when it comes to opera here. It just allows me to almost come back to this one every single time. It's my favorite legato in the library as well. We can play it polyphonically as well. Let's just try it because we are in Soundpaint. And there'll be a vowel transition for every single note here. So this is going to be like a little mini choir of opera singers. Just such power, and we also have a little mini choir here at our hands. But let's dive deeper into the other legatos as well. So this would be your standard legato, and it's cool if you just want that operatic sort of ah, but that's why we have the free syllable legato as well to switch it up. I feel sometimes with legatos they can become a little bit static for vocals. We have the ah here in a sort of slur fashion. We can also play it faster. And because we're in Soundpaint, of course, we can play it completely polyphonic as well. So we can have a whole little, let's say, quartet of opera singers. But Maria is a lot more than just legatos. We have arcs, we have sustains, we have effects, we have all these different phrases and ornaments. And then we also have an enormous bank of sound labs. I created a variety of White Lotus patches because I love that TV show. Second season is amazing. And was just sort of inspired what we could do with Maria in terms of using her for a more modern, contemporary, non-operatic style. So this is a lot more experimental. We're almost going the opposite direction of the legatos and that sort of classical realm. But it's just to demonstrate that there's so much we could do with this library outside the realms of conventional thinking, even though we have that in abundance, and we'll come back to that as well. But let me just show you some of these White Lotus patches. Like, I absolutely love them. You'll notice on the mod wheel here that I'm time stretching this fragment here, so it can be very slow. And then as I move the mod wheel up, I can control the speed of it here. And it's so neat in Soundpaint to have time stretching of this fidelity here, because I can stretch this one fragment in so many ways. I just love it. And another one. And they're so cool. If you play them in octaves, you'll get natural division of the rhythms. And you may wonder, is like, how can I use this in my composition? Well, I encourage you to watch shows like White Lotus because there is a lot of that in it where it's sort of unusual And you may go like, that's not typical scoring, but that's sort of one of the landscapes that's emerging right now, that we're all trying to look for new textures, new vibes, and this is certainly a new vibe. Here's another legato. This is our ah slow, so very slurred in its sort of legato transition. So see it as portamento for strings, that very slow kind of legato. It can be really beautiful for those more emotional, subtle moments where you need to stretch the notes and just let it sing a little bit. You know, it's also important when we use tools like this to think about the natural breath. So what I just did was a little bit artificial because no one can hold their breath for that long, or maybe an opera singer can. But, you know, think of it as in terms of your natural breath when you play with it. If you listen to the demos we played a little bit earlier on, I played them that way. I was sort of saying, okay, this would be a natural way I would sing before I need to go up for another gasp of air. It's a good way to think about these tools, especially if you want to do like a really realistic emulation of the operatic voice. And here is another legato, in this case the O. Sort of the tried and true when it comes to vocal sampling, we need our ah and O's. So you'll notice that I have a little bit of gap in between. And even if it's slightly artificial doing it standalone here, once you get that into a mix, it's going to seem more real because that's sort of the natural phrasing. That's how long they could sing. Yeah, we breathe with the samples. And speaking of gaps in the samples, we also have a unique staccato legato here, which sort of plays normal legato, but then it goes into staccato and then it stops. And that's cool because it allows us to do more sort of rhythmic things with the voice, sort of stop it uniquely. And you'll notice here that we're going between different key switches here. We can freely combine them as well. But let me just play the staccato here and then we'll combine them afterwards. Now, let's try to combine the legatos here. Let's start with the free form here and then go back to the staccato. Now, we also have a variety of standard articulations in the library. For example, our arcs and sustains. Arcs are these beautiful sort of moving patches where she's naturally swelling in her singing. We have it for most of our libraries. I love to record it in addition to controlling my sustains on the mod wheel. This is just a natural way that strings or human singers or brass will move in swelling motions, like most music always being alive. Kind of two different motions. The first one here, we're playing from piano pianissimo up to mezzo forte. But on the second one here, we're playing from mezzo forte into forte fortissimo, so more drama in the tone. The swelling is a little more elaborate. We're getting a little more variation in the vibrato as well. We also have long arcs here, so this again is the softer variation of it. And the more dramatic long arc. And notice how I'm subtly moving the mod wheel here. It's not a lot. This is just to control the amount of vibrato in the arc here. So I'm ever so slightly moving the mod wheel here just to give a little more speed and accentuation. So when it's coming up on the top of the arc, it might be a little more dramatic and faster. And as it's coming down, I'll move the mod wheel slightly down here. The vibrato sort of tapering off. This is how we can sculpt the sounds inside of our DAW to truly make it sound alive, like a real human being. Vibrato is not something static necessarily. It's something that follows the cadence of the music and the movements as well. We also have different kind of crescendo and decrescendo swellings, so it'll come to a stop once we hit a certain part of the arc, or the opposite way. So we can sort of create our own arcs by going crescendo and then decrescendo here in the key switches here. Let's start going up. Now in opera, A, because it's the loudest of all the vowels, is the most common one in opera as well. So for that reason, we sampled 5 different variations of A's. There are many ways it can be done. The attack on the beginning of the note can be one thing. It can also be the dynamic of the A. And A can be many things. It can almost get into A when we sing really loud. Isn't it fascinating? The human voice, the greatest instrument ever. Who would have known that A could have so many permutations? Now, this is sort of a classic operatic laughter. Here's another one. He's sort of going from laughter to cry in such a beautiful, dramatic fashion. Right? Which way is it? Is he crying or laughing? I want to show you a few more legatos. I created a few legatos using other instruments. And I want to talk a little bit about that because Soundpaint is getting to a level now where we have so many instruments that we can start creating new combinations of them, also using some of our new tools that we introduced in Soundpaint 3.0 that allows us to build really elaborate things. So in this next legato here, I just want to load out some symphonic strings, a legato patch also playing strings, and then combine that with the opera singer. But the opera singer won't sing until I click really hard on the keys. If we go into sound mode here, you'll notice that I've set velocity block to 100 to 127 for the opera singer specifically. That means if I play soft on the keys, she won't sing. But if I hit the keys harder, she will sing. That gives me the ability to choose when I want her to sing and when I don't want to. Here's another program also utilizing our legato, but in combination with our free 1928 Steinway piano. So when I play softer the keys, I get the piano, but when I play a little bit harder, the opera singer takes over and the piano stops. That's also using our sound mode velocity block here. So you'll notice that the piano plays from 1 to 109 on the velocities, and you'll notice that the opera singer takes over at 120 and 127, and the piano stops. Now, we have thousands of different ornaments in the library. In this patch here, we have 2 different key switches where Maria is singing either a half note down or a whole note down and then coming up again. Let's start here with the half note. Or whole tone. We also have what we call Mordent fragments. These are little 5-note, very quick melodies or fragments, ornaments if you will, both played in half notes and whole note steps. You'll see what I mean. Now, one of the most classical articulations in opera is the famous octave jump, sometimes up to the high C, sometimes not. We sample it both ways, both coming down in an octave and up in an octave. This is just such a unique sort of operatic articulation. These octave jumps here are just classical components. We also have trills in half tones and whole tones. We also have very slow, almost legato-like up and down motions, both for a half tone and a whole tone. And these things are tempo synced as well. We also have thousands of phrases in the library. It would take me many hours to play through these ones here, but let me just show you a couple here. There's unique fragments per key, and in this patch here, you'll notice that we have 8 key switches, so it's hundreds and hundreds of different phrases. They're really just designed to be interpolated into your composition. Steal a little bit here, put it in wherever you need, use the legatos, use all the playable tools, but these are in addition to that. All the things that you may not be able to do, well, we probably cover them in some form or fashion here using these vocal phrases or fragments. Probably heard that one before. And if you look here in our phrases directory, you'll notice that we have multiple key switch patches that have multiple parts inside of them. Some of them from very known public domain operas like Figaro's Wedding, for example. And in terms of making your own, we also have thousands of different syllables. It's one of those things, I can only show you a fragment of it, but just to give you an idea, let me just play with a couple of them here. In these syllables here, which are two fragments, this particular bank here is really designed to be used together. So for example, we can go from Bella to Della on the key switches here. So you can use these different phrases in conjunction with each other and build new, longer phrases out of them. I love that like rolling R in opera. It's so beautiful. Classic Italian. Here's 6 more, also recorded at the native BPM of 80. Now, of course, in an operatic library, we also need staccatos, and we have a wealth of them. Here's just a few. And soft, one-vowel syllables. And if you look at the directory here, you'll notice that we have them in alphabetical order. You can design your own key switches and put whatever you want in them, but this was just our way of trying to organize it. But because there's so many, you have 8 parts in every instance of Soundpaint here. You can virtually create any kind of combination you want between different kind of syllables and vowels and so forth. We're trying to offer you every single thing we can when it comes to the operatic voice. Now, as you can see, this library is near infinite. We really stretched ourselves to the 11th degree to try to cover every aspect of opera singing as we can. And Maria was certainly exhausted by the end of it as well. This is one of the deepest sessions we've ever done for vocals. And I hope you can see that we try to cover every possible angle we can. But because we're in Soundpaint, there's yet so much more we can do. We can venture even deeper into the forest where we've never been before. This is what we call sound labs inside of Soundpaint, where we try to push the patches outside their natural boundaries just to see what happens. So let me just wrap the video up here by taking a no talk walk through some of our sound lab patches here. And I just hope you find this library to be inspirational. And should you ever dream of making an operatic piece, or perhaps try to take an opera singer and stretch it into something new, this is probably a good alternative for that.